Single parenting can feel like a solo journey, but it doesn't have to be. Introducing MomFlex app, the ultimate village web app designed just for you. From financial support to community connections, MomFlex app offers a lifeline, helping you navigate parenting with confidence. Find trusted resources, build your support network, and thrive, because every parent deserves a village. Join the movement today. Visit momflex.org to install the app and take the first step toward a stronger, more supported you.
Welcome to Beyond the Struggle, Rise and Thrive, the podcast where we speak truth, break barriers, and shine light on the journey of single parenting, resilience, and building a thriving life against all odds. This isn't just a conversation. It's a movement. We honor the strength it takes to keep showing up, even on the days when life feels overwhelming. Here, we explore the stories, strategies, and breakthroughs that help us rise, heal, and create generational change. Today, I am honored and genuinely excited to welcome a remarkable guest, Olaolu Okweyemi. Olaolu is not only a proud U.S. Marine officer, but also an award-winning author, a leadership mentor, and the founder of Parent-Child Connect, a platform dedicated to empowering parents, educators, and mentors to communicate, connect, and lead the next generation with purpose. Through his work, Olaolu blends leadership principles with emotional intelligence, creating tools that help families navigate challenging conversations with compassion, clarity, and confidence. His children's book, Crowd from the Shadow, has reached thousands of families, opening the door to meaningful discussions around emotions, choices, self-worth, and resilience. He has contributed to major platforms such as Forbes, Military Families Magazine, and others, sharing powerful insights on fatherhood, empathy, leadership, and raising children who know who they are. Olaolu, thank you so much for being here with us today. We are grateful to learn from your wisdom, your experience, and your heart for empowering families and future leaders. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And let me first start by honoring this platform you have. This is amazing because anytime you talk about getting with single parents and encouraging them and teaching them not just how to survive and thrive, I'm all on board. So I honor this platform. This is amazing work you're doing. And I just appreciate you offering me the opportunity to be a part of this.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to start by asking you a few questions. The first one being, did I pronounce your name correctly? Because
You did. Olaolu Ogunyemi. That's correct.
Okay. Well, I'm Cameroonian, so I guess I can know a little bit. All right. So let me ask you the first question. How do you define resilience in the context of raising children as a single parent?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So first of all, I believe that resilience is the ability to withstand pressure without breaking. That's my definition of resilience in general.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the context of single parenting, that's a fully loaded question. Because I've worked with a lot of single parents and I've seen the hard work. My sister is one of those parents,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen the hard work it takes. And I've also seen some of the struggles and things that you don't see in a dual parent home.
Correct.
And so I believe that resilience, specifically in a single parent home, is really about being able, as you've already alluded to by the theme of the show, to thrive in these situations where normally you could easily become overwhelmed with just the sheer nature of having to deal with some of the problems. And I say deal with, and I use that very endearingly to my children and children across the world.
Right.
They bring up some crazy issues sometimes that us
You don't
parents have to
say.
deal with, right?
You
And
don't
so
say.
it's just finding a way to be able to balance that.
Correct.
And really that resilience comes in the form of community and not necessarily just in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But it does, in fact, have a huge, huge play on the person, the individual themselves. So resilience is the ability to thrive in really a circumstance that is not just unfortunate, but it's almost impossible. And so when you're doing the impossible as a single parent, that's why I say I have to honor this kind of platform, because it truly is a superhero strength that you have. And that's why I believe what resilience is. It's doing the near impossible to help grow children in this chaotic world.
Yeah, my grandfather used to say that it takes two to tie a rope. So imagine one person tying the rope, right? So it makes complete sense that resilience is one of the biggest things for single parents to actually cultivate. So now let me ask you another question, right? So can you share a personal story where resilience play a key role in your parenting journey?
Oh, yes. And so I will tell you many stories. I have many stories for days, but I'll
Okay.
just start with one.
Okay.
So I will say one of the biggest things is when my son specifically, was diagnosed with complex partial epilepsy. One thing that we had to learn as parents is that comes not only with the diagnosis itself of just the uncertainty of not knowing what's happening or when a seizure can happen and so on and so forth. It also comes with just being overwhelmed by the diagnosis itself and, trying to figure things out and all those kind of things. So I would say what I had to do I'll have to speak individually. What I had to do personally is, first of all, relinquish control. Because one thing I realized, I was tearing away my ability to withstand this hard circumstance. And I know any parent out there or any caregiver or mentor can attest to the fact that when you have a child that's going through something that you cannot impact and they just have to go through it, it truly does rip at your ability to be resilient, because, you feel like that you're the protector for that child. And in this case, you can't protect them, and I put that in air quotes, from in this case, a diagnosis. And so I truly had to learn how to withstand the pressures. And one of the things, as I said, was just learning how to relinquish control. I couldn't do anything to change the diagnosis. I couldn't do anything to change his neurological makeup. But what I could do is be present and make the moments count that I had with him. And so that was one of the biggest things that I had to learn. Is like, okay, yeah, he's going through this thing. There's no Eastern medicine and all the other research that I was doing and going from one neurologist to another. All that kind of stuff didn't really do us any good. And it definitely didn't do me any good staring at a baby monitor, just trying to make sure that he wasn't going to have a seizure overnight that I missed. But what it was doing was pulling me away from him and actually making me less resilient. And of course, going to, in the long run, make him less resilient because he doesn't have a present father.
Yeah.
And so really that's what I focused on. It's learning how to relinquish control and just focus on the connection and making memorable moments with them.
How difficult was it for you to let go and say, I just have to be here for my son, but I have to not worry about the rest of it, everything else in between?
It was extremely difficult. Number one, not just as a parent. I'm one of those parents who loves control. Like, as you already said, I'm a United States Marine Corps officer. And it's just in my nature. I have an idea of the way things can happen. And even in the most chaotic environments around the world, you have some form of control, not necessarily on the situation, but how you can influence the situation and try to get to some kind of favorable outcome. Where in this case, I had absolutely no control, right? And once I realized that, and to be completely transparent, I didn't realize that until I was on my floor crying into my own lap. That's when I realized I truly couldn't control it. And I feel like that's when I actually let go. It was a breakthrough moment for me. And it was one of those, you know how you have those real deep, like, cries, those wails.
Yes.
And really, I believe that was me grieving the loss of control. And I know that sounds a little bit different, but I think that's what's the most important thing. We have to know that once we let that portion of ourselves die, we have to let the emotions play their way through. And that was one of my things. It was very hard, but it wasn't until I just sat on the floor and embrace that moment. Because on top of that, we did have a miscarriage within a year, and
Oh
it's
no.
been a bit worse. We also had our AC broke in our house, and that all happened within like 6 months to a year time span. And so it was one of those things that once I truly just sort of exhale and let that sort of drain from my body, and I grieved it. That's when I realized, okay, you have no control over it, and all you're doing is pulling yourself away from your family. And once I realized that, by trying to protect them and trying to be tough and all that kind of stuff, I now was pulling myself away from them. I was like, okay, you got to make some changes. And so it wasn't easy, but I had enough motivation knowing that they needed me in
Yeah.
that moment. Yeah, a father, a present father for them, and husband, that I decided I had to let go of control.
Yeah. That's exactly what they call resilience. That's resilience right there at play. So now that we're talking more about resilience, how do we model that resilience to children in everyday situation? How do we do
Yeah,
that?
that's a great question. One thing I always tell people, especially men, is to be open with your emotions. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this is tough because there's a fine line. For one, I'm not telling anybody to project your emotions, which in other words, force them to feel a certain way or attempt to force them. But I do say be transparent with the way you feel and the way you deal with situations. Now, the trick here is you have to learn how to manage your emotions and your reactions to things, because if you are, super reactive and you get upset and you act out and then perhaps throw like what I call adult tantrums,
Yeah.
then perhaps you need to fix that first before you're able to truly model that. But the best way to do it, I believe, is when circumstance happen, show your concern, show your emotion. Don't be afraid to cry.
Ah,
Again,
really? You think so? What about, I come from Cameroon, right? And growing up in Africa, men are not supposed to cry.
yeah, it's what's funny, and that's why I love saying this, because I also grew up in one of those households, and quite honestly, I don't think it was my parents that encouraged that, but it was six of us, two older sisters and then four boys.
Mm-hmm.
Three of us are 2 years apart, and I have my little brother who's 5 years apart. And so when you think about the most masculine and macho man environment, that was us. Like
Yes.
that's who we were. So it took a while, and really my children had to teach me this, because to be honest with you, I saw my dad cry I think one time, and that was when he lost a real close friend, and I mean, it just paused the world for me. I mean, I watched my dad pour a pressure cooker of hot water on his arm, and he just said, and then went around the corner, right? And this is how I've seen it, and so I didn't learn that until I got older and realized, man, my son, if I want him to be emotionally available to me and I want him to be able to come and express himself and have healthy emotional intelligence, then, I have to be the model of that. And so it did take some unlearning some bad habits.
You, you
'Cause
know,
again,
I, I agree. I agree. Like I have a son. I used to like bring the what I learned back when I was growing up, and I would tell him, "Men are not supposed to cry." But I would tell him, I say, "You don't cry in front of them. Cry behind closed doors." That's what I used to tell him. I say, in front of them, you don't want to show them your weakness. You want your weakness to be shown in close quarters, where it's just you and whomever you want to show that weakness to, but not the people outside, because you know people usually will take that weakness and use it against you. So you don't want to do that. And I think that's why parents in those generation used to say a man don't cry, because they knew that people will use that against them, right? So but now it's like sometimes in the United States, people, when a man cry, they will say, "Oh, I don't want to use the word word," but
no, you're right. And to be honest with you, it was a survivalist thing. I mean, you got to think when you're sort of growing up. My mom used to always tell me, if you just to echo your point, she said, if you let people know which buttons to push, they're going to push them.
yes, yes, yes.
That's exactly how it is, right? So it's a survival thing. It's like, well, if I let them see my weakness, they're going to exploit that. And
Mm-hmm.
in some cases, right, then if they're able to exploit my weakness and my vulnerabilities, that means they're able to take more from me. And so
Correct.
I think that's where a lot of it came from, to be honest with you. But yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. That crying, it does bring about a little bit of a stigma that I think we're trying to break, especially in our community. We have a
Yes,
tough time with
yes,
that.
yes. But I believe that your significant other should be able to see you cry. You should be vulnerable with your children and vulnerable with your significant other so that they know where you stand and what's going on with you. Now, outside, yeah, be strong and all of that. Show the strong face. But yeah, to your point, this society today, it is a different ball game versus what it was like in 1999 or 70 something. It's completely different. The mentality have completely shifted, right? And don't start with Generation X. Is
You're absolutely right. But you touched on a thing that your significant other and your children should be able to see you in that vulnerable moment. But I like to challenge people because we have these stigmas in our minds,
Mm-hmm.
especially with significant others when we're dating or getting married. We have to realize it, especially when you're dealing with men or you're dealing with somebody with that type A personality,
Yeah,
be careful what you say in the moments when they become vulnerable.
correct.
If they're being transparent with you and you sort of just, shrug it off, or even worse, you have a negative response to it, you just taught them something in that moment, right?
Correct.
Especially when they're trying to build those close relationships, those in-depth
Mm-hmm.
relationships.
Yeah,
You've taught them they can't open up to you. And if they can't open up to you, to your point, who are they supposed to open up to? And I think
correct.
that's really incumbent upon us to fight that urge, that stigma to say that, in order for this person to be strong, there's no way they can show the quote unquote weakness,
Mm-hmm.
which is being really an authentic self. And so
Correct.
that's what we have to be able to do, accept the authentic version of other people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, many single parents face setbacks that feel overwhelming, like financial stress, emotional burnout, social isolation. What practical strategies do you suggest for maintaining resilience in the midst of all these challenges? Especially you went through a very difficult time, right? You went through a very challenging time and you pulled through it. What strategies did you use beside the fact that you relinquish control? What else did you do to
Yeah. So first and
this?
foremost, stop trying to conquer the world in a day. That was my problem.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to fix every single thing. Not only did I want to fix my son's neurological makeup, I wanted to make sure that my wife was happy. Now, I'm using this word very loosely here,
Mm-hmm.
but I wanted to make her happy. I wanted to make sure my son was comfortable. And oh yeah, I had an older daughter who I want to make sure she's taken care of. And I want to make sure I'm performing extremely well at work. I want to make all these things that I was trying to do at once. I just wanted to conquer the world and be there, be everything for everybody at one moment. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe that we all share that in common, that especially us high achievers, we truly want to continue to just keep going as if nothing is happening. So the first thing to do is to start prioritizing things in your life. Okay, what is important and what has to be done? So I would say that's the first thing. And then the second thing is give yourself a break. Every time I
Yes.
meet parents who feel overwhelmed and they start walking through everything, a lot of times the overwhelmed feeling is coming from the need and the desire to just be there and be there for other people, and they feel like they're failing in certain areas. And it's like, listen, a lot of times, most of these people who I talk to are doing a phenomenal job. They're taking care of their children. They may not be providing, the Jordans and the Porsches or whatever else that they're trying to do, but
Mm-hmm.
man, they're doing some phenomenal stuff that it's just, you can't really compare to a two parent home. So give yourself a break in that regard. So those are two things that I would say right off the bat to help people who are feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah. So now, how can parents reframe obstacles as opportunities for growth?
Yeah, so that's the first thing that I always recommend to folks. And I take that I use that metaphor because I was one of the ones who did an obstacle course. It's called a double obstacle course in my early Marine Corps training. And I actually failed on the second one. And so when I look at life circumstances and tying it all back to resilience, I started looking at every single situation that happens, whether it be a failure, especially public, or anything that just seems like it's working against me.
Mm-hmm.
Started viewing it as a way for me to grow. And that's really what it was. Okay. So this situation with my son, and I keep using this because that was just a hard situation that I
Yes.
think a lot of
Yeah.
parents
Yeah.
can resonate
Sure.
with.
Yeah.
The situation with my son, I started viewing it as not just a hard situation and an obstacle that's really challenging my family, but I started looking at it as an opportunity to work with my children and become closer with them
Mm-hmm.
and understand like what they feel. So I, of course, focusing on my son and trying to like figure out things for him. Now there's another child who's not getting the focus that she was getting, especially because she was oldest. I had my oldest daughter when I was still in college, right?
Yeah.
And so I had this relationship I had with her where she was the only child for like 5 years. And now you flip it about 5 years. Actually, it wasn't even 5 years later, about 3 years later. And now you have this young man who is now taking all the attention because he's had this sickness as she could see it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's recognizing the other things that are happening and trying to find ways to make sure that you're taking care of everybody in your home. And so that's really what it came down to me and how I was able to start viewing these circumstances as opportunities to not just focus in on the situation, but to learn how can I overcome the situation and grow through it. And most times the answer is it's growing a connection or a relationship with someone else. And that's how I was looking at every obstacle as an opportunity.
So are there habits or routine that help sustain resilience over time?
Oh, yes. And so one of the biggest things that I advocate for is finding time, at least 10 minutes a day per area, to
Yeah.
build your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And
Yes.
that sounds like a luxury. I know specifically for special or for single parent homes, but trust me, it is worth it. If you got to chop away some other time, I now this may be TMI, but I always tell people even if you have to use toilet time to do it,
Hey,
whatever you need to do,
you
use that
speak
time.
my language here, brother.
Well, I use that because normally I explain to people that you have more time than you may think.
Yes.
And the reason I say that is because there's times where you can really take time and you may not be able to do physical, but you can at minimum read a book or
Correct.
meditate while you're there. Put on music, headphones, and take some
Yes.
time to decompress and meditate. And that 10 minutes can now become a peaceful area. And that's why I call it your toilet time, your bathroom
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
It's your time to now, you can turn that from where it is to your own area where you're dreaming, you're meditating, and you're focusing yourself to prepare for the day. And then taking a 10-minute walk if you can, whether it be, taking the stairs at work or whether if you have a lunch break, maybe taking a snack that you can eat and walk. Those kind of things are important because what you're doing is you're investing in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you can go out and begin to pour into other people. And I truly believe that those habits, specifically the ones that build your physical, mental, and emotional strength and spiritual strength, are the ones that truly help you build your resilience over time.
Yeah, you cannot pour from an empty cup. I always say that to people, and especially me when I come back from a long day, as you know, when I park my car, I stay in my car. My daughter will send me a message, Mom, are you home yet? Yes, but I don't see you. I say, because I'm in my car. But why are you in your car? Because I want a me time before I get there. Right? I give myself 10 minutes in that car. I just sit in it. Just sit in my car. I just take time to just reflect of the day, what happened in a day, and just take time to not even think about anything. I listen to music. Maybe I was listening to my last piece of music and I really want to enjoy it. I will sit there and listen and dance out my soul. And then I will say, okay, it is time to go back in that house. Okay.
That's beautiful. Now, that's awesome because what you're doing is you're transitioning your mind from work mode to home mode.
Yes.
And that's a good transition. So I tell people I do the same thing. And the reason I do it, and I tell my family, and they respect it now. They didn't respect it initially because they would just run out to the truck as soon as I arrive sometimes. But now they respect it. I take that 10 minutes to decompress.
Yes.
Because, when you're at work and you're dealing with or you're working with Marines or your corporation or students, if you're a teacher, whatever your profession is, there's just a certain mindset that you have to have. And really you're there to help the company achieve their bottom line. Whatever your organization is, they have to achieve their mission, which it impacts their bottom line. Whereas now you're going home and you truly have a vested interest in every single thing. Now it's your organization, it's your bottom line that you have to impact. And so that's really where I love that idea of taking some time to decompress. And sometimes it's straight up taking the time to pump yourself up.
Yes.
Going to your next job, it's your next role as a parent. And that really is the next, 5-6 hours before you get the child to bed. And now you have maybe a little bit more time before you rest.
Correct. So in your book, Craft from the Shadow, you address topics like emotions, self-worth, decision-making. How can parents approach conversations about adversity with their children in a way that empowers them?
Yeah, beautiful question. So the first thing I would say is find some way to connect with them. That's why I love stories, because books have traditionally provided us a way to connect with people on a level that we probably could not connect with them otherwise, because there's books out there with numerous topics. There are numerous categories and genres, and they just relate to people in different ways.
Correct.
And so when you're able to sit down with a book, you're able to now relate to establish that common ground that maybe didn't otherwise exist. And so that's really what it's all about, establishing that common ground so that way you can establish a connection. And then once you establish that connection, you can look at the themes within the story or the themes within a movie or a TV show, whatever it may be. But you look for those themes and start to be able to work through it with your child. So the way I would do it, using Crow from the Shadow, for example, it has continued the conversation questions in the back of it. And what you do is you try to identify what the shadow is. And in this case, the shadow is a person, place, or thing that tells you that you cannot be what you want to be, or just stops you from achieving the things that you know you can achieve. And you start to help that child identify that shadow in their life. So really, that's the way I always recommend to people to use these stories or books or whatever it is that their children enjoy to teach them about adversity.
Basically, the boogeyman, right? The person who the children are more scared of.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's that inner critic. So once they learn how to get over that boogeyman, that inner critic that's telling them that they can't do or maybe telling them, persuading them to do wrong things. Just to share with you the feedback that I got from some parents, it was mind blowing. Because when I said Crow from the Shadow, I really was thinking about, just overcoming the things that were truly like your insecurities and things of that nature. But once we start talking to children and they started bringing out, the shadow for me is a thing that tells me to do bad things, and I have to learn how to not. And I'm thinking, wow, for them to be able to now identify this shadow and be transparent with their parents, now it's up to the parent to sit down and now work through that with them. So it was just beautiful feedback that even for me writing it, I wasn't anticipating some of the feedback that I've received.
Yeah. I can see the shadow being the invisible friend that the child is always listening to, right? And doesn't want to listen to parents, but they listen to everything the invisible person is telling them, and it always bring them to find themselves in situations that they're not supposed to. So that's a great metaphor for drawing children resilience out and also making them take a stand and becoming who they are meant to be. So that's beautiful.
Right.
Yeah. So now let me ask you, so how do you talk to kids about failure, disappointment, or fear?
Yeah, so that's a wonderful question. So the way that I always do it is I'll just introduce how I do anytime I'm engaging with children.
Yeah.
I start with some kind of icebreaker, and it's usually the most silly thing that you guys can think of. I mean, I've done everything from warming up my voice by doing singing exercises to, clapping, to even like telling a dad joke that they don't get, and then I try to tell one that they do get, and normally it doesn't work out, but at least they laugh at me for looking goofy. But anyway, I start with some kind of icebreaker, and then I start to talk about something that I know they're familiar with. So if there's a parent that's already introduced me to some of the things they enjoy, then I'll use that. Perhaps there's a teacher out there that tells me things that they've been reading and studying, so I use some of those lessons. But in any case, I usually use something that they've already been exposed to.
Yeah.
But then there's the actual real life application, and that's where it becomes tough. So the real life application is taking that failure for them and saying, okay, how do you feel in that moment? And that's where I believe emotional intelligence comes into the picture. So in my own home, what I started doing is trying to not just allow them to, not even just asking them, how do you feel about it, but teaching them different emotions that they wouldn't otherwise know. So I hung up probably about 50 plus emotions on our wall. So that way our children can do a better job of defining what emotion they feel. Because otherwise they say good, bad, happy, sad, and they don't truly understand the emotion that they're feeling. And if they're not able to communicate what they're feeling accurately, then it's hard for them to receive the help they need. And so that's really how I teach them how to deal with failure. The first thing is to teach them what emotions they feel, whether it be disappointment, whether it be anxiety or fear or whatever
Mm-hmm.
it may be. And then I start helping them walk through some of those strategies to sort of work through some of those emotions they may be feeling in response to that failure. But the biggest thing I always tell them is that failure doesn't mean it's the end, and failure is a verb, not a noun.
Yeah.
In other words, you have failed. That means the action that you took, you may have made a mistake. You failed in this regard. Maybe you took a test and you failed, but you are not a failure. And so
Correct.
those are the things I try to emphasize for children anytime I'm trying to teach them to overcome failure.
Are there age-specific approaches that parents should consider when discussing adversity with children?
Yes, of course. So if you ever wondering how to communicate with children, sometimes I recommend, and this gets a little bit harder and harder as time progresses, but I always recommend going to YouTube and seeing the kind of things that they interact with, that children of your age range are interacting with.
Yeah.
So you can go on YouTube and type in children's resources for ages 0 to 3, or for 3 to 6, or whatever the age range is. Go in there and type it in, and just observe some of see if you can find some trends in the things that they're reading and they're watching. And that way you can now start to say, okay, this is how they're receiving information, whether we like it or not. This is how they're receiving information at school and wherever else they go. And so now you can use those tools that exist already to communicate with them. Now, I always tell people, I'm not suggesting that you start looking up all the lingo and try to keep up with them. I'm so sick of some of these trends that are going around that sort of seem to be taking over the world. But you should understand like how they're receiving information, and I think that's the way that's to me that's a practical way that you can use some of the tools that already exist and learn some of the vernacular and the ways that they're receiving information before you go through and try to teach them how to overcome adversity.
Yeah. And to that question, I would like to ask you, like, can parenting through adversity often requires balancing discipline and empathy? How can parents maintain authority while nurturing emotional intelligence, especially in today's time where everything is on the internet?
Yeah. So that's first of all, I want to start with that key point. Today's world is a lot different than what we grew up in.
Yes.
They have
Amen
so
to
much
that.
information at their fingertips. It is very hard for us to wrap our mind around at times. For me, for
Yes.
example, I didn't have my first cell phone until I was in high school, close to about my senior year. And even then, when you send a text message, it costs 10 cents. And I think the internet, it costs like 10 cents a minute or something like that. And so and we had dial up at home. So, if somebody wanted to get on the phone, you lost service and it was slow. So we just didn't receive information as fast as the children do today. So we'll start there. But then the other part, to your question about discipline versus empathy, I love those words because it's words that we use all the time. So empathy is simply understanding a child. That doesn't mean giving them the authority to make their own decisions. And I think that's where sometimes as parents, we sort of mix that up.
Yes.
Because we've confused empathy with being friends and being overly friendly and allowing them to do basically whatever they want.
Oh, I am not my children's friend. I tell them that. I'm not your friend. I'm your mother.
It's good to emphasize that. Some people don't like to, when I talk to some parents, they're like, well, I don't see the need to do. Well, I believe there's a need because one thing I do see is a lack of respect for authoritative figures.
Yes.
And that's the problem that we have is that existed in my childhood. And again, my dad's from Nigeria, so I know a lot of that played in it, but I also grew up in the South. And so respect for authoritative figures was a real thing. And what it did is it created a divide between those who can mentor and guide you and you who are the pupil. And that's where discipline comes in.
Yes.
Discipline comes in from you being a disciple, which is the root word of that, the word discipline, you being a disciple of someone else. But if you look at everybody as equals, then why would you even agree to follow them? Why would you accept their teaching if they're just your equal? And I think that's where society's taken a wrong turn, is that our idea of discipline has almost become more of a friendship. And so our idea of empathy becomes more of a friendship. And it's almost like I'm suggesting something that if you follow it, then great. If not, then great. But no, it's truly you are the teacher. They are the pupil, which is what discipline is about.
Yeah.
And you are understanding them. You understand how they see the world. You're understanding all the information they're receiving. and you're finding ways to get them to accept your teaching. But you still are the authoritative figure. You still are the parent or the teacher, mentor, caregiver in this situation who is trying to lead and guide this child based upon your experience on this earth.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. Can you then share examples from your military experience that inform your parenting philosophy?
Oh, yeah. So that goes back to one of the first things I learned is that everyone is different. So what works for my oldest child doesn't work for my middle child and doesn't work for my youngest child.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that I interact with them is going to be different. The way that I instill discipline in that case, and I say that again, being the teacher and they are the pupil, the way I get them to understand and apply the lessons that I teach are going to be different. And so one thing I had to learn is in the Marine Corps, a lot of times we use that word discipline in our early training. And
Yes.
the first thing that usually comes out is that there is some kind of punitive action or some kind of punishment that's going to happen if you don't do. But what I had to learn as I continued to grow in my career is that making sure that somebody has a punitive action or there's immediate consequences only gets immediate results. But true discipline is what helps them to understand what you're teaching in context and they apply your teaching whether or not you're around. And that's where your integrity comes in. That's where you help them to develop their character. And that's what it's all about. So really discipline is more than just consequences for actions. And it's truly developing that human being into a better person. And that's what I've learned from the Marine Corps. But I come back and apply at home. It's really having one-on-one time with my children to help them grow.
That's wonderful. So how do you help children navigate their own emotions when parents are under stress? Because that's very important.
Whew. Now that goes right back to what you said earlier. You cannot pour from an empty vase.
Correct.
And that's truly where we start having our hardest time. When we're stressed about something and we try to lead from a depleted environment or depleted self, we tend to make that situation a lot harder. And so I would say, first of all, if you're stressed out, you have to take some time, if you can, take some time to decompress a little bit, at least, to where your stress is not causing you to react emotionally. So that's the first thing, because that if you are still reacting emotionally, then that child is going to react emotionally, and it's always going to be that way. And one of the examples I use is when I was working with a parent going out to the store. They're talking about, my child always acts out in the store. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's see if we can break down what's going on with this child. And so we realize is that the child will want something. They'll ask for it. The parent will say no. And because the parent's already expecting something to happen, the child starts crying.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as the child starts crying, boom, the parent gets upset. You need to stop crying or I'm going to take you outside. Now the child is getting even worse.
Yes.
It's almost like an escalation of force. The child's getting upset and the parents getting more mad and until you get outside and you take them to the car and you try to calm down or you administer whatever your method of discipline is. And then you realize that happens so often, it continues to happen. And now, in many cases, the parent is even getting more stressed because it's in front of people. So now they're responding because they're embarrassed. And there's just so many things going on in that situation that's causing it to become worse. When in many cases, it can be prevented, or at least it can be lessened if we choose to control our own emotions first. Because no matter how old the child is, I have a teenager, she's 16, and I have a 6-year-old. No matter how old the child is, if you respond with emotions, as I had to learn the hard way, trust me.
They will respond with emotions.
They're going to respond with emotions too. So that's really the biggest thing. If you want to teach them to be resilient, you have to get your reactions under control.
So from your perspective, what does a village of support look like and why is it critical for single parents to have a village?
Yeah, so a village of support looks like, first and foremost, us realizing that we cannot do it ourselves, and especially for a single parent home.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I mean, we have to open up our hearts to understand that, yes, the world is crazy. Yes, there are people out there that are just doing evil things, but there are also a lot of people who are willing to invest in your household and invest in you and your family to help you continue to grow and develop. And that's really for single and dual parent homes. It's knowing that none of us we know what's best for our children, but none of us are know all. We don't know everything that the child needs. And even if we did, We can't provide everything the child needs in and of ourselves. We have to have a village. So
Yeah.
what that village looks like to me is it starts with having a bridge between the areas that the child and goes. So, for example, if a child goes to school, you have to have a bridge between you and the teacher. And that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing that in our current society, I feel like that we started losing quite a bit of, where teachers sort of do their thing and they cut it off when they leave the school, and then the child gets home, and then you do your thing, and then you cut it off, and there's no real communication between the two. The children don't see the teacher and the student, and excuse me, the teacher and the parent interacting with each other.
Yeah.
It's just two different worlds for the child, and so there's a gap there. And so the first thing is try to bridge the gap to everywhere the child goes, whether it be the school, the after school programs, the church, wherever your child goes. I recommend that you bridge the gap. And the way you do that is, number one, build relationships, genuine
Mm.
relationships with teachers, with caregivers, with if you go to church, your pastor or whomever else. Try to build those genuine relationships again, so the child sees it happening, and so that way who's around your child. You
Yeah.
understand the values that they're teaching. So I believe that's what a village truly looks like. It looks like exactly what we imagine a village or a small town looking like.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
that everybody knows everybody, and we truly understand who's who, and we know who's not going to be good for our children. We know who's going to be great for them. So that's what I think it is. And I know for a fact it's important for single parents, and honestly, it's also important for dual parent homes as well.
So how can parents identify trustworthy allies when they feel alone?
Yeah, so first and foremost, relationships. It's tough to say because there's many cases, and I've talked to many single family homes, and the amount of abuse that has happened tends to build up this wall of distrust. And so I want to start by acknowledging that. I'm not going to pretend that it's easy to build those relationships when there's a wall of distrust,
Mm-hmm.
especially if the other parent has not been very supportive or very active, or if they were abusive in the past. But the way that I would say I've always recommended is try to get to know people. And what that looks like is, what's your natural community? Are you at work? Do you have a close knit team at work, or is it just sort of you go to work and do your thing and come home? If you don't, then that's fine. I understand some people don't invest that much at work. But what about your other places that you go, whether it be to the library? I know some people love taking their children to the library, and sometimes you see parents there. Your neighbors, how do you interact with your neighbors? Again, if you go to a place like church or any kind of community events or community service projects, then how do you work with those people? And so that's the biggest thing is get to know them first. I'm not an advocate for, and I never have believed in it, sending your children out and letting them find households and then you go. No, it's you getting out and letting people see you, and you get to interact with them and speak to them and know who they are, especially in your own community, before your child even slightly interacts with another child. And that's one thing, especially at a young age. My children, the way I looked at it, my children couldn't go stay at a house. It took a while for me to let them do sleepovers. But once we started doing sleepovers,
I don't
it's
believe
because
in sleepovers. I don't believe in sleepovers. I have 11-year-old and she has a best friend ever since they were 1 year old. They were going to preschool together. When she turned 8, she was like, "Mom, we have to do sleepover." I say, "Oh child, mommy don't do sleepovers." I literally, I trust that woman. She's the only person that I actually trust with my child, because so many other parents have asked me for sleepovers and I'm like, no, not that they are going to do something to my child, but because I just don't feel comfortable letting my child sleep over. And she's the only one that I can go to a business trip and I know she's my backup person, and I'll go and say, "Okay, darling, you're going to Tanya. Mommy has to go have some place to be," right? So I can leave her there. And I created that bond, but it wasn't easy for me to even agree to let my daughter go have a sleep over there, right? And the way it happened was she convinced me to let her daughter do a sleepover at my place. And I said, okay. So, and then I felt compelled, like, oh, I felt so bad. I said, okay, if she can trust me with her daughter, I should be able to trust her with my daughter. And so then I was able to trust her with my daughter. And I kid you not, that woman takes care of my daughter as if my daughter was her own flesh and blood. And And it makes me feel comfortable letting my daughter go there. If it wasn't because of that, she would never, ever do sleepovers.
Let me tell you something, and I hope that everybody can hear this. I'm the same way, and we legitimately have had people sleep over at this house in our home multiple times before our children have gone back over there. And we've had this same conversation, that same feeling of like, well, I'm more comfortable because I can see them. Then when you turn that around, as you did, you turn that around and you start thinking, I had to think, I wonder what those other parents think. One day I thought about that. The fact that they come over all the time or in fact, they say, oh yeah, well, can they have a sleepover? I'm like, well, they can come here and have a sleepover. I always wonder what those parents thought. It's like, how many times does this person not trust me? What's going on? I thought we were here on the same page, and we knew we look out for each other. And so it does take. It's nothing wrong with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's once you have that relationship with that person, and hopefully, if you're close enough to say, hey man, how come they have to come to your house? That's even better, because now you have that brother and sister, that bond that I truly believe exists or should exist within a village.
Correct.
You should have that bond to where, maybe they're referring to him as auntie, uncle, that kind of relationship to where it is, so closely knit that for a fact that, if the house is burning down, your child is the first one out. It's not, oh, oops, I forgot them in the backyard. It's truly a care and desire to see your child thrive. And I think that, 100% comes with just time getting to know them. So I appreciate you sharing that story, because I think a lot of us are on the same page when it comes to that kind of environment, but it's all about relationships.
Listen, I was born and raised in Cameroon, and we didn't do sleepovers. Right? To friends. Sleepovers were with cousins and family, not with friends. So it was difficult for me to change that mindset, which actually leads me to the next question. So some single parents will hesitate to ask for help, feeling they need to handle everything themselves. What advice do you have for them to overcome the mindset of not wanting to ask for help?
Well, when I talk to single parents, one of the things I learned is that a lot of single parents were ashamed to ask for help. And I was like, it sort of blew my mind. I was like, well, you're shamed. What is there to be shameful about? And they're like, well, I don't want people in my business. I don't want, I don't want to feel like a burden to somebody else. And it blew my mind to even think about that. Because sometimes those feelings are warranted because people actually treat them that way, right? Because people made them feel like, oh, why are you asking? And this is your fault you're in this situation, and so on and so forth. So I had to start by apologizing to them and say, you know what? I hate that you had to deal with that situation and that selfish individual that said that to you. But just know that there's so many people out there who truly desire to be a part of your community. And so the first thing is that there's nothing shameful about it. All of us, whether in a dual parent home or single home, really do need a community, a village around our children. We cannot do it alone. I promise you that. I have a large family, and there are times when my children talk to their uncles and cousins and aunties and my parents and my wife's parents. They all get different information, or the same information from different places, but it doesn't resonate the same way when it comes from me or from their mom. And so I know for a fact I cannot do this by myself. There's been many times that they'll go to church or something like that and have somebody tell them something. They'll come back and tell me that. And I'm like, man, didn't I just tell you that like 2 days ago? That's what I think in my head. Right?
Isn't it funny when they actually go and talk about you to your parents or your brother and then tell on you? And you're like, wait a minute, child. We had this conversation. Why you have to call my brother for that?
Right. That's exactly right. It's like, wow, man, goodness gracious. But that's just the thing. We realize that it does require a village to raise them. And that's the only way for them to truly develop and grow into what we want them to be. So, no, I always tell people, release that shamefulness. Feel free to ask for help. And if one person turns you down or they want to come at you with some kind of weird, selfish motive, then you know what? That's just them. That's their problem to deal with, not yours. And just continue to be encouraged to go out and seek the help that you need.
So how can a strong village actually also teach children about interdependence and community?
So one of the biggest things I advocate for is creating programs. And the reason I say this is because I had to go through insecurities myself and with a large family. But one of the things that helped me to grow through my insecurities and to find my identity was to become involved in sports and drill team and things of that nature. But the only reason I was able to become involved in those is because they existed. And so
Yeah.
sometimes it could be as simple as like my mom, she started a crocheting program. And so I learned how to crochet from my mom, and we played sports growing up. It doesn't take a lot of money or a lot of resources. Sometimes it's just as simple as bringing people in and teaching them. I remember this gentleman, he taught us how to build computers. He worked on a university campus and he was responsible for computers and maintenance and things of that nature. And so he brought us in with 4 different brand new computers he had to put together, and we helped him put them together, right? And that's just creating programs and opportunities now to connect with children and teach them in a different way that they may not have been learned in the past. So that's really the thing I recommend is it's finding ways to create programs and events and ways to connect with children that can bring them into another place and to help them to find themselves and find out what they love and find out what their purpose is for being on earth.
Well, that's very good. So for listeners who want to strengthen their village, what practical steps can they take this week to start building a support system that truly makes a difference?
So first and foremost, this week, go outside and introduce yourself to a neighbor. And I am the chief offended in this. I don't know my next door neighbor's name.
I don't either. I wanted to say I don't know about that one because I don't do that myself. How are we going to do this?
Listen, like I said, I am the lead offender in this, and I have to do better myself. So go out and introduce yourself to somebody else. See if you have anything in common. And that, I would say, that's the very first thing you could do. Get to know somebody.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to learn your neighbor's name, learn what they're interested in, and sort of start growing that relationship. That's the first thing. Second thing is, if you have the time, start find a skill that you do, what you do well, what you can offer to the village. I use the example that my mom did, and she knows how to crochet and she enjoyed it. And so she invited people to learn how to crochet, and that didn't take much time for her. She already had all the material she needed, and she just taught people how to crochet. It could be singing, it could be playing instruments, whatever it is. If you want to start a garage band or something like that, as long as your neighborhood allows it, go ahead and do those things. Find a way that you can contribute to the village aside from introducing yourself to your neighbors. So I would say those are 2 practical things that you can do this week to start building your village.
So if you had to give one piece of advice to single parents facing adversity right now, right this moment, what will it be?
So my first piece of advice is always going to be just take a deep breath. You are truly phenomenal people. I know it sounds cliche, and I know you probably are tired of hearing it, but there's just so many wonderful things that single parents can do that I admire personally, because I know that I would struggle in these circumstances and I would have to grow. So the first thing to do is just take a break and recognize that you are way stronger than you may even know that you are. And then the second thing is go hug your kid and smile. No matter how old they are, no matter how stressful today was or this week has been, go give them a hug, smile, and just say, I love you. And there's nothing you can do about it. And I know that one thing, sometimes it seems cheesy, especially when they're acting out. But that one activity truly is warming, and it gives them an opportunity now to feel the physical love that I know that you're providing them. So if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, just know that child still loves you, and I believe that you're doing a phenomenal job.
So looking at your work with Parent-Child Connect, how do you hope to change the way parents approach leadership, empathy, and resilience in their own homes?
So what I'm looking for is for parents to have the ability, or to, I guess, reestablish what was done many years ago, the connection between adults and children. I understand that in society today, especially with the movies that we're watching and some of the books that we're reading, that there's this push for children to basically come to their own enlightenment, whether the parent is involved or not. But what I hope to do through my platform is to provide the parents an opportunity now to sit down with their children and build that connection, build that relationship, and guide them through the situations that they're going through. Again, because they're receiving information, they're being influenced in so many different ways that if we're not finding ways to collaborate with those influences, if they're good, or combat those influences, we're going to find our children going astray. So That's really the biggest thing I would say. And through my platform, I hope to provide resources that can allow children and parents to sit down and truly have those teachable and memorable experiences.
So could you leave our listeners with one final thought or mantra that has guided you both as a parent and as a leader?
Yes, life is like a weight room full of things that could either crush us or make us stronger. It all depends on your perspective. And what I mean by that, and I literally got that idea from standing in the gym when I was looking at all the weights. I was like, man, I want to get strong. I want to get in better shape. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I realized that if I were to go over there and pick up the heaviest weight, it truly would have crushed me. No matter how strong I thought I was, if I were to throw all the weights on the bar, I'm going to be crushed by it. But there's another perspective that if I start small and do these small things well and these small habits, then I can actually build strength. And yes, my muscles may break down temporarily, but they're going to heal themselves, and then I'll be able to grow stronger and faster and smarter over time. So that's really what I believe in. I truly believe in the small habits and actions that we can take are really the most important things. Those daily hugs, those daily kisses, those daily conversations, and reading those books and things of that nature will make the difference in their lives, not necessarily just the big trips and things that we love to do to give our children the rewards. It's the little actions that count.
Well, Olaolu, thank you for sharing your wisdom and practical guidance today. Your insights remind us that parenting through adversity isn't just about survival. It's about resilience, intentionality, and building strong communities around our children. Before we go, could you leave our listeners with one final thought or that, that you just want them to have beside the mantra you just shared with us?
Yes. If you ever need somebody, reach out. We're at parent-child-connect.com, and we would love to help you in your community and help you grow your village. And just we want to be that support system for you. So that way, no matter what your situation is, we're able to grow and develop with you and help you to really develop the next generation of impactful leaders. So we'll love to please reach out. Don't hesitate. And we'll love to connect.
And how can they reach you? How can listeners reach you?
Yeah, so the best way is to go to my website, parent-child-connect.com, and you can go to the contact page and just shoot me a note. It comes directly to me, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I have the availability.
All right. I will share that information with the listener as well when we share this episode. So, and for our listeners, here is a quote to carry you forward. It takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a resilient heart to lead that village. Thank you for tuning in and beyond the struggle, rise and thrive. Remember, every challenge is an opportunity to rise, and every small step builds a thriving family. Until next time, keep thriving, keep rising. Ciao now.
Okay.
Queen in every way. Dear Queen, you wear your crown with pride, shouldering the world with grace inside. You're a mother, you're a guide, a steady flame, teaching love, strength, never seeking fame. I see the fire that never dies, through sleepless nights and heavy sighs. You rise again, you light the way, turning darkest night into brighter day. You are a queen in every way, more than words could ever say. Working tirelessly, love your creed, sacrificing all for those in need. So take a breath, reclaim your day. You are a queen in every way.